The year is 1632. Along the eastern coast of North America, a small colonial outpost struggles against the wilderness. Wooden cabins creak under the weight of early snow. Settlers go about their daily tasks, unaware of the storms and disease that silently gather. Time is beginning to erase their presence. In the early 1600s, European nations were racing to establish colonies along the eastern coast of North America. The promise of land, trade, and influence drew settlers to the dense forests and winding rivers. In 1632, a modest outpost was founded near a river bend, its wooden structures hastily built from surrounding timber. The settlers arrived with tools, supplies, and cautious hope, determined to carve out a foothold in an unfamiliar and often unforgiving landscape. Life at the outpost was shaped by the seasons. Winters brought bitter cold, with winds cutting through the fragile cabins. Summers were humid and swarming with insects that carried disease. Each day required labor, planting crops, tending livestock, fishing in the nearby river, or hunting game in the surrounding forests. Despite the outward rhythm of daily chores, vulnerability was constant. A single stone or sickness could threaten the entire settlement. Interactions with the local tribes were carefully managed. Some encounters brought trade and vital knowledge of the land. Others were tense, shaped by suspicion and misunderstanding. Language barriers and differing customs demanded caution, and the settlers quickly learned that every decision, from where to build a fence to how to allocate food, could determine life or death. The outpost also served as a fragile extension of European influence. Supplies and letters arrived sporadically by boat, connecting the settlers to distant lands. Yet the settlement remained largely isolated, relying on its inhabitants' skills and resilience. Every tree felled and every field plowed was a step toward survival, but nature remained indifferent, reminding them of the precariousness of their existence. Despite hardships, the outpost began to grow. Cabins lined a small clearing, a wooden palisade provided some protection, and a single flagpole marked the settlers' claim. Children played near the river and among the trees, unaware of the dangers surrounding them. Even with modest comforts, a quiet tension hung in the air. Storms, disease, and the relentless forest loomed as constant reminders that permanence was an illusion. The settlers' lives were a mix of hope and struggle. Each day ended with familiar sounds, the river flowing, the wind in the trees, and the low murmur of conversation around fires. Within this fragile rhythm, they persisted, building and surviving, yet their presence on this land was fleeting. Time was quietly shaping the fate of the outpost, setting it on a path toward disappearance and eventual forgetfulness. By the late 1630s, life at the outpost had grown more difficult. The soil, exhausted by continuous planting, yielded smaller crops each year. Hunting grounds were depleted as more settlers arrived, and fish in the river became scarcer. Illness began to spread, striking indiscriminately. What had once been a hopeful settlement now felt fragile and vulnerable. The leaders faced constant pressure to make critical decisions. Should they fortify the palisade further against possible attacks? Or venture into the forest to search for new resources, risking injury or confrontation with local tribes? A small group of men was often dispatched on scouting missions. Each journey was dangerous, with the possibility of falling prey to the wilderness or disease. Their success or failure directly affected the survival of the entire community. Weather continued to challenge the settlers. Heavy storms flooded fields and damaged the wooden cabins. Firewood became scarce as trees were felled faster than they could regrow. Supplies brought from Europe were increasingly delayed or lost to rough seas. Hunger and exhaustion became constant companions. Arguments over leadership and rationing occasionally erupted, revealing fractures in the once unified group. Despite these hardships, the settlers demonstrated resilience. They sought alternative food sources, gathering wild berries, nuts, and small game from the forest. Improvised dams were constructed to manage water flow and protect crops. Young men trained themselves in both hunting and defense, readying themselves for potential dangers. Every effort reflected their determination to endure, even as conditions worsened. Isolation weighed heavily on the community. Letters from home arrived irregularly, sometimes months apart. Boats carrying supplies faced storms and political conflicts abroad. With communication limited, settlers were left to rely on their own skills and judgment. Every choice carried consequences. A mistake could lead to injury, death, or the loss of vital resources. Tensions grew alongside the physical challenges. Families worried about food, the safety of their children, and the threat of disease. The outpost, once a symbol of hope in European expansion, was becoming a site of quiet struggle. The settlers' daily lives were now a delicate balance between survival and the ever-present threat of failure. Yet, even in this uncertainty, they persisted. The outpost's wooden cabins, fields, and palisades bore witness to human effort and determination. The forest loomed around them, indifferent to their presence. Each day of labor, each small victory, and each loss marked another step on a path that would eventually lead to the settlement's disappearance. Time was slowly moving the outpost toward forgetfulness. By the early 1640s, the outpost teetered on the edge of collapse. Disease and malnutrition had thinned the population. Only a few dozen settlers remained, their faces lined with exhaustion. The wooden palisades were rotting, gaps appearing where storms had battered them repeatedly. The cabins were weak, with roofs and walls warped by years of weather. The settlement, once bustling with life, now carried the quiet weight of desperation. Winter arrived with unprecedented severity. Snow buried pathways, and the river froze solid. Fires burned low, leaving families shivering through long nights. Food stores were nearly empty, forcing settlers to ration what little remained. Hunger gnawed at children and adults alike. Some families could not withstand the cold and disease. Their bodies, left behind in cabins or in the snow, became part of the landscape itself. The remaining leaders faced an impossible choice: abandon the outpost or risk certain death by staying. They decided to leave. Small groups packed what supplies they could carry, attempting to reach safer settlements further south. The forest and frozen rivers proved unforgiving. Many never completed the journey. Those who survived faced exhaustion, injury, and disease. Some disappeared into the wilderness, leaving no trace. As the settlers departed, the forest began reclaiming the land. Palisades collapsed under snow and rain. Cabins fell into ruin. Footpaths disappeared under moss and fallen leaves. Even the river seemed to erase the signs of human labor along its banks. Within a generation, the outpost vanished from memory. Its existence survived only in fragmented letters, maps, and scattered artifacts. The losses were total, though quiet. The outpost, designed to secure a European foothold, had succumbed to nature, isolation, and misfortune. Its story remained incomplete, remembered faintly only by a few distant observers. The settlers' struggles, hopes, and daily routines were now indistinguishable from the surrounding wilderness. Time had begun to erase both the settlement and its memory. The climax of the outpost story was not marked by dramatic battle or catastrophe alone, but by the slow, unyielding power of nature and circumstance. The settlement's disappearance was gradual yet absolute. What remained were shadows, broken structures, empty fields, and faint traces of a people who once labored and lived here. By the end of this period, the outpost had ceased to exist as a functioning community. Silence claimed the land. Nature overtook human endeavor. Time had completed its work. Centuries later, the site of the outpost lies silent. No cabins remain intact. Wooden palisades have rotted and collapsed. Moss and vines cover the ground where settlers once walked. The river flows as it always did, indifferent to human history. Wind rustles through the trees. Footsteps leave no lasting mark. The lives of the people who built this settlement have vanished. Only faint shadows hint at their presence. The forest has completely reclaimed the land. Trees grow where homes once stood. Shrubs and grasses cover the remnants of paths. Stones, tools, and fragments of pottery lie scattered, partially hidden under decades of soil and leaf litter. Nature has erased nearly all signs of human activity. Even the memory of the outpost is fragile. Letters and maps that once recorded its existence are faded or lost. Archaeologists can piece together glimpses of the settlement, but the full story is gone. The outpost exists only in fragments, fleeting impressions, and the imagination of those who study it. No smoke rises from chimneys. No animals domesticated by humans remain. The river, once fished for food, moves freely through the empty landscape. Wolves, deer, and birds inhabit the area as they did before settlers arrived. Life continues, but human life has been removed from the equation. The forest envelopes every trace of the outpost. The rhythm of seasons and weather erases evidence further. Snow buries remains, wind scatters loose debris, rain erodes the structures that stubbornly linger. Each passing year increases the distance between the settlement and memory. The silence is profound. One can imagine the voices, footsteps, and labor of the settlers, but only faintly. Fires that once warmed families, the creak of wood, the laughter of children, and the urgent movements of work are gone. Time has consumed both people and their efforts. The land now speaks only in wind and water. The outpost, once filled with activity and struggle, has returned to quiet. History itself has moved on. Records may mention a settlement here, a group of European settlers who tried to carve a life from the wilderness, but the details are sparse. Names, daily routines, challenges, and tragedies are mostly lost. Modern maps do not mark the precise location. The outpost exists as a memory of a memory, faint, incomplete, and fading. Its story is almost entirely erased. The site stands as a testament to impermanence. Human ambition once clashed with nature's power, yet in the end, time prevailed. The settlers' efforts, their survival, and their hardships have left little more than whispers. Nature has swallowed the land and erased the lives that once defined it. Only shadows remain. The outpost is gone. Its existence is a ghost, a forgotten fragment of the past. The river continues to flow, trees continue to grow, and the wind continues to move through the pines. The silence is complete. The memory of those who lived and died here has vanished. Time has erased all. If this story mattered to you, consider subscribing. More forgotten history is coming.